Hello, Gen Mex. Welcome to this video on Medicare, Original versus Advantage in Mexico. You may not have known that you can get some kind of Medicare benefits in Mexico or anywhere in the world, actually, but they are, of course, limited and limited in many different ways. So I've got someone with me today, Ron Elledge. He is my Medicare Advantage expert, and he is here with us today to explain everything you need to know about Medicare and Medicare Advantage, especially if you're living in another country. And we're going to start out with some basics. We're going to talk about 2025 updates. We're going to talk about specific things if you're living in another country. So, Ron, thank you so much for being here. And maybe I can just throw out my first question. And that is just your basic 101 for those of us who are not Medicare recipients or maybe are new to the process to understand the A, B, C, D, and E, I think, of Medicare.
Okay, Brighton. And first, let me just say, hey, it's nice to be with you again. I always enjoy it and look forward to our time together.
Awesome.
So let's shoot the moon, shall we?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, let's start out with Medicare, Original Medicare. Original Medicare is basically A and B. Medicare A is called hospital insurance. It covers you when you're in the hospital. It covers skilled nursing, hospice care, and a few things like that. And there basically is no premium for that as long as you have worked for at least 40 quarters during your lifetime and paid taxes. Anybody that will qualify for Social Security will qualify for Medicare. Part B is medical insurance, and that covers your doctors, hospital stays, skilled nursing, hospice, everything that's emergency related outside, whether it be in the emergency room or anywhere else. And that A and B are original. They're a government program, and they really are a 80-20 plan. So Medicare pays 80% of your approved charges, and you pay 20%. And the scary thing about it is that there is no limit to your exposure. So if you go in for a $2 million service, you're on the line for a lot of money. It's one of the large factors for people going bankrupt in the United States today. Now, Part B has a premium on it. In 2025, it was $187.50. And we're expecting that for 2026, it could possibly go up as high as $206. It may be less than that, but that's really what it's projected at, and that's what we're expecting it to go up to. Now, Part B is the one that you've got to be really careful with because it's the one that has the penalty on it. If you turn 65 and you become eligible for Medicare and you don't take out your Part B right away, and you're not working for a company that gives you health care, then you are going to start accruing a 10% penalty per year. And that's for a full 12-month period per year. So if you were out for 10 years in Mexico and didn't take out your Part B, when you come back, you're going to owe not only your $200 a month for your premium, but you're going to owe a 100% penalty. So you'll be paying $400 a month, and that's a life sentence. You got to pay that every month for the rest of your life as long as you take Medicare. So I want
to stop on that for a second because this is something that I think is very important. That a lot of people who move to Mexico have no intention of moving back to the United States, and they want to move there and they're going to die there, and so they don't pay into Part B, which is an option. Save some bucks. And however, the problem being that things change in the future. And so you lose essentially by not paying for Part B, you lose your Plan B. So if Mexico is your Plan A, but moving back to the United States, if you become very ill and really need some extensive treatment, a lot of people do move back to the United States for their Medicare benefits because it is a very good plan, assuming you've gone through and pieced it together properly. And Ron's going to tell us how to do that. But it is something you want to seriously consider if you're planning on not paying for Part B. And I just wanted to kind of throw that in there as something I've heard people doing in Mexico. That's just a little warning, I guess.
Yeah. In fact, I make it a big warning, and that's very right on, Brent. It's really it's an interesting deal. I tell people, get your Part B as soon as you can, keep it, and never let it go, even though it's going to be a little costly. It seems like because there's one constant in life, and that is that things change. And you know what? It's not even the 10% penalty that can really cause you the problems. It's the fact that when you come back, you can't get Part B except between January 1st and March 31st of the next year. So if you came back April 1st, you wouldn't be able to get any doctor, any emergency coverage, anything like that in the United States until the following February 1st. And that I've seen that happen where it's almost bankrupt 3 families when a lady did it from Italy. So we do have to be very careful with it, and it's a caution. But you know what? It's a decision that's personal, and and your people have to make it. So
yeah. Let me interrupt you one more time, Ron, if it's okay. And
sure.
That is to point out that you are not only an expert on Medicare Advantage, but you're also an expert. You are kind of the go-to expert for international living when it comes to these things, because you are very much about helping people who are living overseas. I mean, of course, you're helping people who are living in the United States too, but you do specialize in folks who are living internationally. So that's why I've got you on this show. You're not just any Medicare Advantage expert, but the one who likes to live internationally or has done it himself and works with International Living Magazine.
Correct. In fact, about, I guess, 7 years ago, they commissioned me to write the book on Medicare Advantage, Medicare, all phases of Medicare, but then how to specifically use it for expats and travelers. And that book has been well received, and we update it every year. So it's called Medicare Made Easy: what expats, frequent travelers, and you need to know.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, we're going to get into those specifics of living overseas or in Mexico, but let's go back to, I think we were up to parts D and C and E.
Yes. Now, Part D, Part A and B, of course, don't cover your drugs. Part D is the prescription plan. And that will include all of your outpatient prescription drugs, whether they be brand named or generic. And when I say all, I don't mean all of them are covered by Medicare, but all of the Medicare covered drugs are covered under Part D. And that's offered by a private carrier. It's not a government program. That's offered by private carriers that work with CMS, the Department of Medicare and Medicaid Services. And they have to go ahead and file their plans every year, and they change every year also. In fact, let me just pause here for 1 minute while we're on the Part D. That was one of the big things that happened in 2025 because of the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed in 2022. In 2022, they passed the law, and it's going to take about $173 billion out of Medicare over the next 10 years. The interesting thing is they passed it in 2022, but they triggered it to start in 2025. One of the things that did is it changed the way the structure of Part D plans are, whether you're getting a Part D drug standalone that you put with a supplement, or it comes compact in an Advantage plan. And that has just made some real differences in the drugs that you can get and the cost of the drugs that are involved in it. For high drug users, it was amazing, because it took your maximum out of pocket a year that was running $8,000, dropped it down to where someone that uses a lot of drugs, they're not going to pay over $2,000 in 2025 and $2,100 in 2026. However, it got rid of the donut hole. So there's no when you get done paying your $2,100, you go directly past go, and you don't pay anything else for the rest of the year. But what that did is that sent a lot of costs for drugs back into Medicare's lap, who paid 80% of it when you're in the catastrophic time. And then what they did is they turned around the same time in 2025 and says, we're not going to pay 80% anymore. We're only going to pay 20%. and the carriers have to pick up the rest of it. So that threw a lot of cost of drugs back into the drug plans and back into the Advantage plans, and there was quite a struggle in 2025, and that adjusted out pretty much there. We're going to see little changes in 2026. But boy, watch your drugs this year, because a lot of people are finding either a drug that they've taken right along, either that it is no longer a Medicare drug, or it may have gone from a tier 2 to a tier 3. Tier 2 where you might not pay anything on your plan, and a tier 3 where you pay $50 a month. So it's something you got to really watch with the Part D. Mm-hmm. Then if you're not going to interrupt me again, I'll keep going.
Yep, you just keep on going. Okay, if I interrupt you, I will just yell out and interrupt you. So
that's fine. You're welcome to any time. Part E, now, not everybody refers to it as Part E, but it is called that, and that is your supplement plans. Because original Medicare is that 80-20 plan, we have to cover that 20%. And there's two ways to do it. We can do it with the Part E, which is a supplement plan, or a Part C, which is a Medicare Advantage plan. Now, the supplement plans, they're also offered by private insurance carriers that are approved and licensed with CMS. The same carriers that do the drug plans, that do the Advantage plans, do the supplement plans. They cover what original Medicare leaves behind. They have a substantial premium. They have a deductible for Part B. All of them have at least that deductible. And often they have some small co-payments along the way also. If you turn 65 after January 1st, 2020, there are no supplement plans that cover drugs. So that's another thing that is not covered. There's 6 different plans going by different letters. If you're looking at them and you see a supplement plan B, don't confuse that with Part B of Medicare. But there are 8 of them for 2026. 6 of those do have limited worldwide travel coverage with them. And we'll discuss that in a little bit. And then we come to the Part C Advantage plan. This is the one that has become so popular in the United States, and especially popular with people that are living overseas, that are traveling overseas for longer periods of time. Advantage plans combine A, B, and normally D also drugs in it, so that everything's covered and it's all in one little tight plan. They often have no premium, but they have structured in co-payments and co-insurance that you pay for most things. The interesting thing about them is that they have a maximum out-of-pocket every year. So once your A and B expenses hit the maximum out-of-pocket of your plan, and that I've seen those as low as $500 in California, and I see them as high as $7,000 in some areas, $7,900. I think they can go up to this year, and so. But once your plan reaches that with all of your co-pays and co-payments, then you pay no more for A or B the rest of the year. So at least that limits any exposure that you may have over the year. And oftentimes, by the time you hit 70, 75 years old, your maximum out of pocket is less than you're going to pay for premiums in your supplement plan, whether you use it or not. They have to cover all A and B. They will include Part D almost always. Some plans don't, and we look for those for people that are on VA coverage and a few other things. They often include dental, eyewear, hearing aids, gym memberships, over the counter, and more things that are not covered under A and B and are not covered under supplements. Now, to be fair, some supplements do pick up the gym membership now. And the majority of plans offer worldwide coverage in various amounts and limitations. Advantage plans are now the preferred plan for the majority of beneficiaries in the United States. And I will share with you also that they are the most critiqued, and they are by far the most regulated offering that Medicare has.
Great. Well, we are definitely going to cover some of those critiques because I know that that's something that pops up whenever we do a video together, Ron. We get questions down there. So we're going to kind of preemptively try to touch on some of those things. But let's get into the part that many people are probably looking for, is that overseas coverage for both the supplement plans and the Advantage plans.
Both the supplement plan and the Advantage plan, their worldwide travel coverage includes emergency coverage, urgent care coverage, and emergency transportation or ambulance. Let me define emergency and urgent care. A lot of people, that concerns them. A medical emergency is when you are a prudent layperson. You don't have to have a doctor's advice on it, but a prudent layperson with just an average knowledge of health and medicine believe that you have medical symptoms that require immediate medical attention to prevent either loss of life, or if you're a pregnant woman, then loss of your child's life, loss of a limb, loss of the function of a limb, or other serious impairment to bodily function. The medical symptoms may be an illness, an injury, severe pain, or medical condition that's quickly getting worse. Urgent needed services is far wider spread. It covers services that are not emergency services. It's provided when the network providers are temporarily unavailable. You may not be able to get to your provider. You can go to urgent care. That's true a lot of the time when we're overseas. Or they're inaccessible, or when the enrollee is out of their service area. Now, for example, if you need immediate care during a weekend, services have to be immediately needed and medically necessary, which is best for travelers then. It's so easy to wake up with a severe sore throat in the morning, and you don't know whether it's going to get better or going to get worse. So you can go in and have it checked anywhere in the world, and you'll be covered. That's anywhere that the State Department will let you travel. So which one is better for travelers is something that we look at. Is it a Medigap or is it the Advantage plan?
Okay, so what is the answer, I guess? What's the Medigap or Advantage plan? What are the differences between these two?
Okay. Well, the supplement plan coverage, the 6 of them that have coverage, the supplement plans that have worldwide travel coverage, covered exactly the same, all 6 of them. You pay a $250 yearly deductible for using it for either emergency or urgent care. You pay a 20% coinsurance on all medical covered expenses. They have a $50,000 lifetime maximum to their covered benefits, and you are covered for up to 60 days of each trip outside of the U.S. So it's a very limited coverage. It's very frightening coverage to me if you're relying on it, because it's so easy in Mexico to go over $50,000 in an emergency in a day. I see it often.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, I think we have to, often in Mexico, people are relying on just paying out of pocket, which is, wonderful. You need some x-rays, you broke your leg, something like that. Maybe you even need a week in the hospital. It's going to run you, $8,000 or something like that. But if you get into a serious car accident, and I know people who have been in this situation, it's going to get expensive very quickly.
And it's
not nearly as quickly as the United States, but it could get into, the hundreds of thousands of dollars for one issue, one accident or something like that.
Let's take that. Let's take $100,000. If you're on a supplement plan, you're going to pay 20% of the first 50,000. So you're going to pay right there 10,000, and then you're going to pay the next 50. So you're out of pocket of 60,000, and you have no more coverage for the rest of your life on that plan.
Yeah. So maybe it's good that there is some coverage. As I understand, original Medicare alone, if you don't have a supplement plan, isn't going to cover you outside the United States, except for very, very tiny little circumstances, like if you're traveling between Alaska and Washington or something like that. But you're going to have some coverage. So if you're a traveler, if you're going for short trips overseas, maybe it's better than nothing, because you're going to have some coverage, but not great for catastrophic.
Exactly. And that's what it's for.
Yeah. So you want to be able to cover that, especially overseas. A lot of places, healthcare is so inexpensive that you can pay out of pocket, except when you get into a catastrophic situation.
Correct.
So Okay, yep, that's my interruption. Let's go around to Advantage plans. I think that's what you were up to next, was talking about the Advantage plans overseas.
Correct, and that's a little different, quite different, really. And I want to start right out by saying that Advantage plans are not all the same. Different companies, and even in different states, the same company may have different worldwide travel coverage on their plans. And so each time when you're looking at this, you need to research the specific plan and be sure of what coverage you're going to end up with. But what we're looking for, okay, and this is what I can always find, it's just what we're looking for, and that is these plans, you pay the plan's scheduled co-payment when you go in. If you went in for an emergency, depending on the plan you have, the co-payment is usually somewhere between zero. There are plans that will waive it when you're overseas, and $145. It's usually based on your emergency in the emergency cost that would be in the United States. You pay no additional co-insurance, so there's no 20% or anything. They have very few of them, a few of them, I guess I ought to say, have no lifetime maximum on benefits. We're seeing some of them that are putting 25, 50, and 100,000, but it's per year, but it's still a little bit iffy when we look at that. But we've still got good plans that have unlimited coverage while you're overseas. And the coverage, this is what people like, is the coverage lasts up to 6 months for each trip outside of the U.S.
Okay, so then let's talk about that 6 months outside the U.S. So I've got to come back to the United States to be able to kind of re-up my plan. Do I have to stay in the United States for any period of time?
It's interesting. Years ago, they used to write it to the plans used to write it to where you had to be in your area for 6 months each year. That's switched with all of the people that are doing the snowbirding and that are living in campers all over the United States. And it's amazing what's loosened up in the last years, and the overseas travelers. And now the only thing they say is that you cannot be out of your area. You can be out of your area for up to 6 months per trip. They don't say how long you have to be in. And as long as you come back in, and I tell people, when you're back in the United States, trigger your plan. Don't plan on having to show your passport or something if there's a question comes up later. Trigger your plan. Go see a doctor. It's zero to go see your primary care. Get your yearly fitness checkup. That's zero. Run a blood test. If you have to, go to an urgent care and just get checked out. That way your plan's triggered. And if you do have something go on 5.5 months after you've been out of the country, the first thing they're gonna look at is he current with his plan, he or her? Are they current with their plan? And if they're current with their plan, there's no questions asked. If they don't say that you've triggered that plan, then we get into the questions that nobody really wants to go into or answer, and that is, how long have you been out of the country? How can you prove that's how long you've been out of the country? And then whatever else may come up.
So one thing that this kind of popped into my head when you were talking earlier was about your copayment is $0 to $145 on an Advantage plan. Now, it's typical, though, that you would have to pay for this and get reimbursed by your Advantage plan if you're in Mexico, correct? They're not going to pay a hospital directly or something like they would in the United States.
Yeah, they won't pay a hospital directly. Really what you do around the world is you pay the bill, get paid receipts, and we can mitigate that too with different types of evacuation policies and stuff, and then submit the paid receipts to your carrier and get reimbursed. That's everywhere except in Mexico, and some areas now in Costa Rica, and some even in Panama. And in Mexico, there are carriers that will work as intermediates that will take your Medicare, and then they'll file it for you instead of you having to file it, and you just pay the small copay.
Yeah, that is a great service. It's not available everywhere
No,
in
it's
Mexico.
growing. Boy,
So,
it is growing.
yeah. I mean, it's a great idea, great service to have.
Yeah.
So one of the things that pops up is the idea of, clearly you're a fan of Medicare Advantage plans, and so this video is definitely pro Medicare Advantage plan. But there are some risks, I guess, with that, and one of them is with coming back to a supplement plan after. And I think you kind of mentioned this earlier, but just because I want to kind of talk about the supplement plan, switching back to a supplement plan, just because it is something that often comes up in the comment section. So if you can talk to that a little bit.
Okay. That is something that is very confusing for a lot of people, when you can come back and when you can't. If you, let's say you were on a supplement plan when you turned 65 and you had it for a while, and then you were going to start traveling. So you decided, really, it would be advantageous for me as long as I'm out of the country. And I'll tell you, I've got people living all over the United States that come back once every 6 months just to keep their Medicare going. But so if you were somebody that was going to be traveling outside of the U.S. a lot more, and you decided, I think I'll go to the Advantage plan, but you've heard all the talk go on about the fact that if you leave a supplement plan, you can never go back to it. And so let me just address that a little bit. First of all, if you're on an Advantage plan and you decide that if you're on a supplement plan, you go to an Advantage plan, you have a trial period of 1 full year. That's the first thing. And anytime during that year, you can go back to the supplement plan with no questions asked, right back where you were. So that's not a problem there. However, with a supplement plan, there is nothing going to stop you from going back to a supplement plan. Let's say you have been on one on an Advantage plan for 10 years and you come back, or you've just been on Part B and living outside and you come back to the US and you want to get on a supplement plan. You can go ahead and apply for a supplement plan, but you'll have to undergo underwriting, and that's about a 2.5-page disclosure of different things. Now, some of them make it very difficult. Some of them have it very easy. One of them that we use an awful lot only has 4 questions on it, so it's relatively easy unless you have something that is really tough, and then you can't get back on the supplement plan. But another thing that we realize is that a lot of the supplement plans are specific that when you go in at 65, your rate is never going to change the rest of your life, except for the incremental changes because of inflation and changes to Medicare and things like that. But to have a yearly increase for age, no. However, if you've been 10 years out of the country and you come back at 75 and you go back to the same supplement plan that you were on, you are going to have to pay the entry age of 75, and that is going to be a lot higher. And so those are the drawbacks, and that's the problem with not wanting it. Now, let me just be clear. I do both for people. There are reasons that I tell people, no, you need to stay on the supplement plan or get a supplement plan, at least for a period of time. However, for the people that I've seen I've seen go from the supplement plan, and I've been doing this for 19 years now, go from the supplement plan to the Advantage plan, I have seen a mere handful that have ever decided to go back. Just my experience.
Yeah, so let's talk just briefly about the Advantage plans, because this is essentially government paid for private insurance, and so there are a number of carrots, I guess, in terms, like you mentioned earlier, the gym membership. I know where I go and play pickleball, I know that there's a senior membership that gets paid for by their Advantage plans, or maybe, as you said, some supplement plans might do it too. So going from Medicare, which is accepted pretty much anywhere in the United States, you can walk into a doctor's office as long as they accept Medicare, versus the Advantage plan. Why is the Advantage plan so popular, and why does the government like it so much too, I guess, maybe? So it's a kind of from a consumer and from the government standpoint.
Okay. Well, from the consumer point, one of the things that you just said that people have got to realize, and that is, yes, you can go to any doctor anywhere in the United States as long as they take Medicare, and about 97% of them still do. That's not an issue. However, the reason that people like that, and the reason that that seems so attractive, is that they're living in California, and they're down in Texas or even New York, and they want to see a doctor. They can go to any doctor that has that's on that takes Medicare. However, you can't. In the United States now, there are very, very, very limited areas in the United States that as a new patient, you can go see any doctor in the United States in less than 30 to 90 days. So you're going to, if you have a need to see a doctor when you're traveling throughout the USA, it doesn't matter what plan you're on. You're either going to be dead or healed by the time you can get in to see a doctor, unless you go to emergency or urgent care, and all the plans cover that. So that's something that has changed in the last 5 years, really, to where we're just so overloaded in our system that you can't get into a doctor anywhere, especially a first-time patient. I can't even get into my primary care when I'm in New Mexico in less sometimes than 3 to 4 months. It's crazy.
Yeah, definitely. I had a similar experience. I've talked about it many times on this channel, how if I want to see my doctor in Mexico, I send her a WhatsApp message. She immediately replies back, and she'll see me usually the next day, if not the day after. Same thing with specialists. They can usually get me in within 1 or 2 days. That just doesn't exist in the United States anymore. It is very sad to see my primary care here is about a 3-month wait. And so this is also a good thing to mention, that when you plan that trip back to the United States 6 months out, it's probably good to get your appointment scheduled at the same time you're planning your trip, because it's going to take a while to get an appointment.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and that's why I said one of the things you can do to trigger is go to an urgent care.
Yeah,
you can always go there. While we're talking about that, let's just diverse one other place too, or whatever you call it. Anyway, do a detour here a second, and that's back to that Part B. And that is people that live overseas. If you decide you're going to give up your Part B because you don't want to pay that, be really careful when you come back to the United States, because your plan that you pick up in that other country is not going to cover you in the U.S. Probably 90% of the time.
So you're talking about foreign, like travel care. Most travel policies write out the United States, so you can pretty much get care anywhere in the world. But often the United States is the one place you can't get care.
So. Yeah, and well, even if you can get it, I'm 77 years old now, so I've dealt with all of this, and that is, I'm in a situation now where I either can't get, period, or there's no way I can afford travel coverage. So I always rely on my Medicare, but I would anyway because I know how to use it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not going to let you off the hook on why the government loves Medicare Advantage so much, because they definitely seem to love it, and they're pushing it to make it more and more popular. So what is it that, from the flip side, I guess the non-consumer side, why is it the government wanting more people to be on Medicare Advantage?
It gets the responsibility from them. That's number one, and that's a big one. I think there's a lot of people in the government that realizes when the government takes something over, it becomes horribly expensive and very seldom works. That's not political. That's just a reality of what happens in the U.S. so much of the time. Doesn't matter who's in the White House or any other house. It just happens that way. And so I think there's a lot of people that realize that. Number two is, overall, it's usually less expensive for the government to have you go on the Advantage plan. And it puts the ball in the court of a whole lot more than we think, in the court of the Advantage plan carrier and the costs. And they're the ones that have to juggle it all, and they have to make sure that it's all actuaried, and they have to take care of all of that. So I think those are probably the biggest reasons that the government likes it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, let me dig in there one more, just because a question came in this morning on a video that we did probably about a year ago, and that was specifically about your doctor saying that you needed a certain test or something, and your private plan saying no, and that being a problem that could happen on an Advantage plan versus the other system. So maybe you could address that about denials, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, that never happens. I'm kidding. Let me tell you something about denials that we don't hear a lot of, that is that you can have denials on supplement plans also. And the reason for that is you have denials on Medicare, because Medicare still, a lot of the newer testing that is out and things like that, they don't cover it. And they will deny it. However, if it's a Medicare covered event, then supplement plans will cover it. I'm going to get back to that. The Advantage plan, you have to go through a pre-authorization. You used to have to always go and not only get it pre-authorized, but you had to get a referral from your primary care doctor to go to your specialty doctor. That's old. That very few of the plans do that anymore. In fact, this year when they come out, there's going to be even fewer of them. So it's that prior authorization that you have to get, and that's where we run into the trouble. And I'll tell you, at least 3-4 times a year, I have to go to the mat with clients, and we have to go through the process of either grievance or appeals to get it through. We normally can do it, but sometimes it can take longer than you want it to. And so it can be an ordeal. And for somebody that doesn't have help, or doesn't really understand, their Medicare options, it can just be a nightmare, and you walk away from it and you're denied. They've had some come out in the past. It's been 8 years ago now, where they have actually found some of the groups that have told their underwriters to not deny anything in this category up to 5 times. I mean, that's been litigated, and that doesn't happen anymore. But here's something that is really scary, and that's changing with your supplements. There are 6 states that are in 2026 that will be under a trial period, and if it goes well, and it will, for the government and for the carriers, then it'll be a mandate nationwide, and that is prior authorization for supplement plans on it's going to be limited at first, but it's still going to be growing on different services that they offer.
Okay, so yes, definitely change is upon us. So and you talked a little bit, I think, about the Inflation Reduction Act and things that are going into place or went into place in 2025. But of course, we're now under a different administration. And there are folks who are worried about Medicare. There's folks who are worried about Social Security. So maybe you can talk a little bit about any changes, with the political winds blowing different directions, any changes for 2026 that we should be watching out for, or for upcoming in 2027 and beyond.
Okay. I have had reviews so far. The full plans are not out until October 1st for 2026. So I can't even talk about specifics of plans until October 1st. And then we can't write anything, an application on anything, until after October 1st during the annual enrollment period. However, I've been spending time with carriers, and, I have to go through just unbelievable. But I've been through almost 80 hours of courses and testing and reviews with the carriers and everything already this year, because I'm pretty much nationwide now, and about 19 different insurance companies that I write for through the United States. But so I've had a lot of previews of what's coming, and overall, except for the Medicare Part B change, which it's going to go up, and we're probably going to see the Medicare Part B deductible for the year. There's always one of those. That was $266. It's probably going to go up a little bit. The Part A, this is all Medicare A and B. They're probably going to go up. This is all mostly inflation rating. We're not going to see much difference in Medicare in 2025. Possibly, in 2026, possibly not not heading on later either. What's happening really, though, is a big shakeup. And that is they're trying so hard to get fraud, waste, and abuse out of the system that there's no question they're probably gonna stop some things that they'll have to restart like they have in other areas. Hopefully they'll get that done sooner or later. So there could be some short disruptions and stuff. But overall, we don't see any real issues from the big, beautiful bill. The one thing that people were really talking about and afraid of is that it was said that the big, beautiful bill was going to cut services in rural areas and they'll be closing their hospitals. From everything that I have seen and everything that I have heard from the insiders, it's almost the opposite. And that is, they have gone ahead and they've expanded the definition of a rural emergency hospital so that more of them can qualify under that. And then they have raised the amount of money that's allocated to that. And the whole idea is they're trying to keep those rural hospitals intact as much as they can. Now, that's got to be a struggle. I mean, you realize that's just got to be a struggle because there's not doctors that want to be there. There's not people that want to pay what it's going to cost to have a doctor there. And so it's very difficult on the rural hospitals. And you'll see the Medicare plans themselves have always been different for different counties. And in Arizona, you go from Maricopa County and then you go up into one of the far-flung counties, and you'll see a very big difference in the Advantage plan. That's always been true.
And actually, that's a good point that I feel like maybe you touched on this. I heard it, but I feel like we've talked about it more in the past, is the fact that all Advantage plans are not the same.
No,
they are county specific. There are different companies that offer them. There are different plans for different states. There's different plans in different counties in different states. So just address that just a little bit so that people are aware, because I think I have heard that, my uncle's friend up in New York had a problem with his Advantage plan. And so I don't want to have an Advantage plan. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I'll tell you, don't ever believe what you heard from Uncle Joe. Third hand anyway. But all Advantage plans are really assessed by the zip code and the county. So the county has an influence in it. And that has to do a lot probably with how many senior users there are, what the population is, what the ability is for the insurance companies to be able to pull together doctors in networks, because most of them are based on networks. Now, the networks in the major ones are huge now. And guess what? They're almost all nationwide. So it makes it a lot easier if you're going from California to New York and you're on an Advantage plan that actually has a nationwide network. It's a lot easier to get in than it is on a supplement plan to a doctor. So that's crazy, but it's true. And they're going that way more and more. They're becoming more liberalized. The supplements are being more scrutinized for how they do business. I imagine it'll all come together somewhere in the future. But when we look at it, they're all different. So what you've got to do is, whenever I deal with anybody that is wanting to just shop their coverage, and by the way, I never have a fee or an obligation for anybody that wants to come to me for information. I'll work with anybody, and there's never a fee or an obligation. One of the things that I do is I get all of their doctors, their current doctors, and I get all of their medications. And I even put them into a program that I have that will spread that through all of the carriers in their zip code, which is probably in their county, because there may be several zip codes in that county. But I do it by zip code, and then it'll go ahead and put those together, and I can just in a heartbeat look and see how many of your 5 doctors are in the network of this one, this one, this one, and this one. And so what I'm able to do is put it together and give you a choice. And it's your choice. Look, this program really is a little bit better for what you're looking for. However, you'd have to give up Dr. B, where this one is not going to be quite as good in these areas, but you can keep Dr. B. But what I do always is that's your decision. That's never my decision. Does that help?
Yeah, that definitely helps. And I think that's great to understand when you're working with someone to help you with your Medicare Advantage. If you're working with Ron or someone else, I understand you're not everywhere in the United States. You're in many places, and we'll have your contact information down below. If you want to reach out to Ron, you'll be able to get in touch with him through his website, I think. So,
Yeah.
but let's talk about this. Might be a good transition, a good segue into timing. This video is coming out in late September, early October. So why are we doing this video now? Why do we always do this video right at the end of September?
Well, it's probably because you're smart enough to realize that it's the best time. No, now
because this is when I get the email, ding, ding, ding.
Now is the time to review your current coverage and your options for 2026. No question about it. There's something that I have learned, and that is the older we get, especially, surprises are not fun, but they can be. But one that is never fun is the unplanned Medicare change that hits you in January that you didn't know was coming. Let me give you an example. Because of the changes to all Medicare drug plans in 2025, that was an absolute imperative time that people checked all their drugs. And again, for 2026, check all the drugs, because in 2026, a drug that you were counting on in 2025 may not be covered by Medicare. And even if it is, it may go from 0 to 47 or 47 to $100. It may go up a tier or two, because they're trying to mitigate that money that's been thrown back into their pocket, into their base over the Inflation Reduction Act. But right now, we're getting ready for the MAOEP, and that's important that it's MA, and that is Medicare Advantage open enrollment period. It's not just an open enrollment period. It's only for Medicare Advantage. And the Medicare Advantage open enrollment period begins January 1 and it ends March 31st. And coverage begins the first of the month after, wait a minute. Let me go back. May I?
Yep, go back. So
I'm sorry. I think I really blew right past the most important one, and I don't even have it here, so I'll just have to wing it. Okay. What we're looking at coming up is the annual enrollment period. I was just reading in the wrong place, probably.
Okay.
That's October 15th to December.
Okay, start this section over and say the annual enrollment. Actually, start this whole section over where I say, why is it that we get together at this time? Because we're at the annual enrollment program.
Yeah, because it's the annual enrollment period, and that's a critical time, because it begins October 15th and it ends December 7th, and then their coverage starts January 1st. Now, here's the thing people got to realize about this small 8 or 9 week period is this is the only time of year that you can enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan if you don't have one. If you're on A and B and a drug plan, you can enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan now. If you have a supplement and decide you want to transition to a Medicare supplement plan, you can enroll during this time. Once you pass that December 7th deadline, then there are very few options for you to get into a Medicare Advantage plan throughout the rest of the year. It has to be special election periods, and we'll look at that in a minute if we have time. So now is the time to review your current coverage and make that change. So you can, if you're in an Advantage plan, you can change Advantage plans. You can drop your Advantage plan, go back to Medicare and get a supplement plan. You can do a lot of different things, anything just about in this period. But once it's over, Advantage plan is over. The next one is the MAOEP. That's where I started and missed. And that begins January 1 and it ends March 31st. It coincides with the general enrollment period. The general enrollment period is when you can go into A or B if you don't have it and you're late getting it. This is the MAOEP. It's the Medicare Advantage open enrollment period. And it's kind of a misunderstanding or misnomenclature or something, because it's not really open. because you cannot go into an Advantage plan if you're on a supplement plan from January 1 to March 31st. You can change your Medicare Advantage plan. You can drop your Medicare Advantage plan, and you can get a Part D plan, but you cannot get a Medicare Advantage plan if you don't have one during that time. So right now we're at a critical time where starting October 15th, I'll be able to really review with people what they could look at, and so they can start making up their mind if it's something they want to do. And then after October 15th, then we can go and ahead and move them into an Advantage plan, or from one Advantage plan to another. And that happens more often than you think because of the changes. But all that can be done during this upcoming period that ends December 7th. So that's why it's really critical right now. Now, when we continue on with the different enrollment periods, there is also what are called special enrollment periods. There are two special enrollment periods for Part B. The first one is really important to realize because that's for people that are working. When you turn 65 and you're working for a company of at least 20 people or more, and they have group health care coverage that is qualified coverage, which is as good as Medicare's, then you don't have to enroll in Part B, and you don't have to pay that premium until you decide to retire. There's no having to wait until the enrollment period later. There is no penalties that are accrued. Once you decide that you're going to retire, then you can go ahead and get your Part B. I always say get a Part A right then because it costs you nothing. But then you can get your Part B. You can sign up for it up to 3 months before you're getting ready to retire. It'll start the day you retire, is what I tell people. You can get it any time, but start at the day you retire so you're not paying double. And you can get into it anytime for 8 months after you have retired or lost your coverage, one of the two. But that's for active work if you or your spouse, and only for active work if you or your spouse. Now, Medicare Advantage have many special election periods, and we use several of these for people that are stuck during the year and they decide, man, I'm headed for Portugal, I'm headed for Mexico, and the first one is the move. It's called an MOV, and that is anytime you move out of your area to another area, you can immediately switch your plan, and you have up to 2 months after you have moved to switch your plan to a plan in that area. People will switch from a supplement plan to an Advantage plan during that time sometimes, but you have to move your residence. The other one is a return from permanent residency overseas. That's an RUS. While you're overseas, you don't have to carry an Advantage plan. You don't have to carry a supplement plan. But as long as you have Part B when you move back, you can immediately get into an Advantage plan. There's never any underwriting for them. Or you can apply for a supplement plan and undergo the underwriting. And either one of them will start the first of the next month if you can get covered for the supplement plan. Normally you can, not always. Then there's the leaving coverage, and that's the individual that's leaving their union, their COBRA retirement, or they're retiring, and you can go ahead and make that change. Then here's one a lot of people don't realize, and we'll hit this during the year sometimes with people, and that is it's called a DST, but it's a disaster declaration, and that's a disaster. If your governor or FEMA has declared a disaster in your area, then for the time period they designate, you can go ahead and change your plan. Another one is a 5-star plan. If you're in an area that has a 5-star plan, Advantage plan, I will tell you, there are very few of them in the U.S., but there are some. You can change to that plan any time of the year if you want to. And then this is my favorite, I think, for people that are having trouble and they want to change and they haven't been able to. They're leaving, they're going to be gone for 4 months and they want to have coverage. And that is called the CSNP, Chronic Condition Plan. Special election period and it's a myriad of things. It can be asthma, it can be diabetes, it can be heart issues, a lot of different things. Now, the crazy thing about these is you go ahead and apply for one of these, and and a lot of them, even on the questions of whether you qualify, will say yes, no, I'm not sure. If you mark I'm not sure, then they're going to go ahead and issue the plan. You have a period of time, usually 1 month, that a document has to go to your doctor and be sent into the plan to show that you really have that. If it comes back no, then guess what? You've been covered under that plan for that month, but now you have a 2-month special election period. You can go into any plan that you want. So there's a lot of things that can be done if we know how to do them. But one thing I'm very careful about, and that is I always want to stay legal, because I don't want to get down the road somewhere and have a big claim hit somebody and they find out, whoops, we did it wrong, and they're going to deny my claim.
Well, that actually is perfect segue to probably one of my last questions here. We're going on close to an hour, but I love this conversation, and I'm guessing that the folks who are watching, they're probably already typing their questions down below. But that is about residency, so that you have to be a U.S. resident even though you're living overseas. And there are people who really try to cut their ties to the U.S. But let's see here. Who is a U.S. resident?
Well, a U.S. resident for these purposes is basically somebody that has a U.S. residential address. Now, you got to realize you can be a U.S. resident and have a U.S. residential address and be renting. You may own the property. You may share it with your brother, your sister, your son, your daughter. You're going to see my wife walk through the video here in a minute. She just came in from work and has to get behind me, of course.
That's okay. She's sharing your residence with you.
Yeah, as long as she pours the wine, we're okay.
Yep.
Anyway, so what you have to have is a residence address. Now, what I tell people is that residential address is where you're going to have your mail delivered. That residential address is where you're going to have your Social Security and your Medicare and your taxes filed from. So those, if you've got those with your residential address, you are considered a resident up to 1 year at a time without proving that you're wanting to maintain it. If you are gone for over a year, they can question your residency, and you may have to prove that you are maintaining it and you do intend to keep that as your permanent residence. So it's not real difficult, and you do have to have residence when you get a supplement plan, and you do have to have residence the whole time you're in a Medicare Advantage plan. Medicare A and B, no. You just have to be a citizen. You don't have to be a resident in the United States.
Okay, good to describe that. Thank you. So where I like to kind of wrap up all my videos is with advice. So would you have advice for folks who are living overseas and are of the age where Medicare Advantage is an option?
Well, I think probably I've already given it to people. And that is, when you turn 65, give very strong consideration to getting both Part A and B and keeping it for lifetime, whether you're overseas or not. One of the things we didn't look at real closely is the fact that if you're living overseas and you don't have Part B and you come back to the U.S. and fall and break your leg, and have to be transported or something, man, that can rack it up and you've got no coverage for it. So be real careful with that, with your A and your B. I think that's really, really important to realize. And one other caution, and that's for people in Mexico especially. There's been some videos out there that say that you can be on an Advantage plan and you only have to come back once every 12 months to stay current. That is just absolutely not true. There are some Advantage plans that have what they call a traveler visitor area or visitor traveler area. And it does state that you can be out of your area in your traveler visitor area for up to 12 months at a time. But in that same statement, it will also say, and that area is limited to the United States. So, boy, just if you got friends that say, hey, my Advantage plan gives me 12 months, tell them to talk to Ron. I'll research their plan for them and show them right where they are, because they need to know that and not get stuck with thinking they've got 12 months and trying to file something 9 months later.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you for sharing that, because that's, there's a lot of not so great information out there. And your contact information, Ron, is going to be down below, so people can click on your website. And I think there's an Ask Ron spot or something like that. People can get in touch with you and get all the information they need, maybe purchase an Advantage plan or sign up for an Advantage plan, I guess. There's not necessarily a purchase there. So any last comments before we wrap up this video?
No, it's been my pleasure. I'll be happy to work with anyone and help you and give you the advice that really you need, because I'll tell you, I've found about Medicare is that it's the best thing going if you know how to write it. If you don't, it can sure cause you some problems when it bucks you off. So, do it right the first time, keep it right throughout, and you'll be happy you did. Also, I'll send you the link to my calendar so that people can go right on there if they want to schedule for a review in October, November, December. They can go right on there, because scheduling is going to fill up fast. I haven't opened it to everybody yet, so I'll shoot that over to you and give them a little while if they want to.
Yep. Sounds good. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ron. You're always such a great source of knowledge for the channel. So I am going to wrap up the video, though, here. I'm going to let Ron hop off. I'm going to show up here and let you know that there are other videos. You can see an old video with Ron because, hey, why not? It's always fun. You'll see more older videos with Ron that might be helpful, and other videos with folks who have moved overseas down to Mexico. You check that out down here. From Portland, Oregon, wishing I was in Mexico. Hasta luego.